7 tombs of the last popes of the Catholic Church. The tomb of Pope Pius XII, 1939 to 1958. Location: St. Peter's Basilica, Vatican City. Eugenio Pacelli, who took the name Pius XII, began his pontificate in March 1939, on the eve of World War II. After intense spiritual conflict, he maintained the neutrality of the Holy See while working behind the scenes to save lives, as some grateful Jewish communities later acknowledged. After the war, he raised his voice against the new dangers of atheist communism and promoted them, which bid him farewell, reflecting the simplicity he requested. Years later, a small sculpture of the child Jesus was placed on it, added by the figure of Pius. Location: the tomb of Pope John the 23rd, 1958 to 1963. Location: St. Peter's Basilica, Vatican City. Angelo Giuseppe Roncalli, affectionately called the Good Pope, was elected in 1958 as John the 23rd. Or updating, for his kindness and prayers of millions who saw him remain there for 30 years. On June 3, 2001, exactly 38 years after his death, his remains were solemnly transferred to the Chapel of St. Jerome in the nave of St. Peter's. Today, his body, clothed in papal attire, rests visible in a glass urn beneath the altar of that chapel, where the faithful can clearly contemplate it. The scene is haunting. John the 23rd lies incorrupt, like a shepherd still watching over his flock, radiating the peace and goodness that characterized him. Paul VI, honors of the Basilica, a tangible reminder of the good Pope who inaugurated a new springtime in the Church. The tomb of Pope Paul VI, 1963 to 1978. Location: St. Peter's Basilica, Vatican City. Giovanni Battista Montini succeeded John the 23rd in 1963, taking the name Paul VI. He had the titanic task of leading the Church through the turbulent 1960s, concluding the Second Vatican Council in 1965, and implementing its reforms in years of accelerated change. Paul VI was an introspective and courageous man. Evangelii Nuntiandi, 1975. He also faced difficult decisions with great fortitude, such as his defense of life and morality in Humanae Vitae, 1968. His 15-year pontificate experienced the fervor of the post-conciliar council. The world bid farewell with respect to the Pope of. He was buried under the floor of St. Peter's Basilica, literally in the ground, without an elaborate sarcophagus or any monument. In keeping with his wishes, his tomb does not rise from the ground. It is a simple pale marble slab at the level of the Vatican grottos, marked only with his name. On the tombstone, on the day of his burial, a bouquet of white roses was placed, a symbol of the purity of heart with which he served. This unusual. Today, canonized Paul VI, 2018, his simple tomb continues this. The stone merely reads Paulus pp. 6 of Pope John Paul, magnifies this silent corner of the Vatican. The tomb of Pope John Paul I, 1978. Location: St. Peter's Basilica, Vatican City. Albino Luciani occupied the chair of Peter for just 33 days in 1978, one of the shortest pontificates in history, but his mark was indelible and presented a more human image of the papacy. He renounced the pomp of. Sadly, his sudden death on September 28, 1978, at the age of 65, shocked and saddened the world. Although it was officially attributed to an acute myocardial infarction, the lack of an autopsy gave rise to many conspiracy theories, which have been refuted by subsequent investigations. The truth is that millions mourned John Paul I, whose humility and warmth had given new hope in such a short time. After his death, John Paul I was buried on October 4, 1978, in the Vatican grottos. Humility. The tomb of Pope John Paul II, 1978 to 2005. Location: St. Peter's Basilica, Vatican City. Karol Wojtyla, Pope John Paul II, was a giant of 78. His pontificate lasted almost 27 years, one of the longest in history. A native of Poland, he experienced Nazi and communist totalitarianism firsthand, which forged in him an indomitable spirit. As Pope, he changed the world. making 104 international trips, bringing a message of faith and hope to millions. He played a historic role in the fall of the Iron Curtain, decisively supporting the thirst for freedom in Eastern Europe. He instituted World Youth Day, bringing writer and thinker, promoting the dignity of the person in the civilization of love. His final years, marked by Parkinson's disease, were a living testimony of suffering born with faith. He died on April 2nd, 2005, at the age of 84 in Vatican City. The crowd gathered in St. Peter's Square spontaneously acclaimed Santo Subito, Sudden Saint, reflecting the popular clamor for his sanctity. The Polish Pope was initially buried in the Vatican grottos in a niche that had previously housed the tomb of John the 23rd. There, beneath a simple white marble slab bearing his name, his remains rested for 6 years. The influx of pilgrims to his burial was hours, inside St. Peter's Basilica. His new tomb is very close to Michelangelo's famous sculpture of the Pieta. There, faithful only confirmed what the people of God felt since his passing. The tomb of St. John Paul II is one of the most visited places in the Vatican. Before it, many find comfort and inspiration in the witness of a pope who was not afraid to tear down walls, both physical and of the heart. The tomb of Pope Benedict XVI, 2005 to 2013. Location, St. Peter's Basilica, Vatican City. Joseph Ratzinger, who took the name Benedict XVI, came to the papacy in 2005 after the long pontificate of his friend John Paul II. A brilliant German theologian, encyclicals on love, Deus Caritas Est, and hope, Spe Salvi, the 6 centuries. Since then, he lived in retirement, died on December 31st. Since then, he lived in retirement as Pope Emeritus in a monastery within the Vatican. His death closed an era, and many felt his basilica is historically significant. John the 23rd rested there until 2001, and then John Paul II until 2011, both of whom were moved upon their beatification. Now, Benedict XVI rests in that venerable place, closing the cycle of 20th century popes. His tomb follows the traditional model, a white marble tablet bearing his name, Benedictus PP 16, and many remember with emotion his fair love to God, spiritually luminous, a humble pope in life, 2013 pope in life and death, whose intellectual. The tomb of Pope Francis, 2013 to 2025. Location, Basilica of St. Mary Major, Rome. Jorge Mario Bergoglio, Pope Francis, was the first Latin American pontiff and a Jesuit elected in 2013. With his approachable, austere, and reformist style, Francis revitalized the social message of the gospel, placing the church and a field hospital, promoted mercy, Jubilee of Mercy 2016, and care for confronted the abuse crisis, and traveled to peripheral areas. Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore in Rome to pray before the icon of the Salus Populi Romani before and after each apostolic journey. Towards the end of 2024, his health began to decline. The Universal Brotherhood. His passing, Francis arranged for burial outside the Vatican, something that had not happened to a pontiff since the beginning. Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore in Rome, a Marian temple to which he was deeply devoted. After the Mass, surrounded by cardinals, family members, and also Toro